This is the Troutbitten podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout.
Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten podcast, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swentowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of troutbitten.com. All right, if you're familiar with the podcast, welcome back. And if you're new to the Troutbitten podcast, we're glad you found us. So this is one branch of what we like to call the Troutbitten Project. There are a ton of articles that I've written on the website that started way back in 2014. There's also a Troutbitten YouTube channel with some great videos that we've put together with Wilds Media. We've done a lot there, and we're working on some cool stuff coming to YouTube in the near future. Troutbitten is also a guide service, and there's a small online shop as well. But this podcast is kind of the glue that holds everything together. It's a great way to keep in touch with my longtime friends here every week. We don't bring in guests. We just keep it in-house, so we do things a little bit differently, I suppose. We pick a topic and have a discussion. So I'll introduce the Troutbitten guys in a moment, and we'll take a couple listener questions before we get to our topic as well. But our discussion tonight is about a certain intangible quality in a person that makes them a good angler. Let's start by calling it being an outdoorsman. Let's use that word. For sure, there are many character traits, skills even, let's say even athletic gifts, kind of things you're born with, that can help someone become a good angler and a long-term angler. Someone who really excels at the game and gets a lot of enjoyment from actually catching fish. And can we just acknowledge that right away too? Tonight, of course, there are a lot of ways to enjoy fly fishing besides catching a bunch of trout. Yes, we're all out there for other reasons besides putting fish in the net. We love the way the woods and the water bring us a certain peace, and we love the process of solving fishing mysteries. Now, that's my disclaimer, because tonight we're talking about anglers who do catch a lot of fish, who seem to have things figured out that maybe others don't, who are just kind of natural at the whole thing. These are anglers who do solve those fishing mysteries. They put fish in the bag, and they seem to do it with ease. So how do you get there? Well, we spend a lot of time talking about tactics, right? Here at Troutbitten, we talk about tactics all the time, and building the skills, understanding leaders and casting and rigging. But along with that, there's something that's just harder to put your finger on. Two things kind of brought up this discussion tonight. First, our buddy Bill suggested a topic of what matters most, river knowledge or skills. And that's something that we will touch on here tonight. But that got me to thinking, what do we really mean by river knowledge? I think what we're really getting at is almost like being street smart. It's a familiarity with your environment and with the way things work. It's intuition, honestly, ingrained by being around these things long enough that you don't even have to think much about them. While for some anglers, a river might be kind of a foreign place, for the anglers we're talking about, a river feels like home. It's a natural, familiar environment. It's just comfortable. So I've heard people refer to this as woodsmanship. And coincidentally, I heard Pat Weiss use the term on a recent podcast. He made the argument, like we will also do here, that this familiarity and comfort level in the outdoors, this knowledge of your surroundings, is a very important part of the game. Woodsmanship is a fine way to put it. And while that term is very much attached to hunting, it doesn't quite have a counterpart for the angler. I don't know what the parallel word is for an angler. Honestly, I've been thinking about how to describe this quality for a few days now, and I don't have a word that satisfies. And maybe that's part of the point. Maybe it should be hard to describe. Maybe it's not surprising that it's hard to describe. Anyway, that's what the guys and I will try to do this evening. We'll talk through this trait of woodsmanship and how it applies to angling. Along the way, we'll talk about how important this quality is and how, more importantly, it can be attained. This is going to be a good one. This will be a good discussion. So let me introduce these guys. I have a full crew with me tonight, minus Darling, because he had some. Josh just moved. Josh Darling of Wilds Media just moved, 2 days ago? And everything's new. So he dropped out there when we were warming up. I say warming up like it was a gig. It wasn't a gig. The full crew with me tonight, minus Josh. So let me quickly introduce everyone. Here's Dr. Trevor Smith.
Howdy.
Glad to have you here, buddy.
Happy to be here.
Your hunting background will be valuable for this one. You know the term woodsmanship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is a term that gets thrown around a lot more in the hunting scene. And my dad's a forestry professor, so growing up around that, certainly woodsmanship, I think, was probably part of the cornerstone of his idea of what it means to be a good ethical hunter. And
Right on.
yeah,
Sandy Smith.
Sandy Smith, Penn State.
We got Austin's dad, Vern, and Trevor's dad,
Yeah.
Sandy.
Those guys would get along really well.
My dad's name's Denny. Denny Swantowski.
We needed a podcast of the dads.
Oh, man, that's not bad.
That'd be pretty entertaining.
Becky talked about that one time. We've talked about having the wives on.
Yeah,
Just the wives.
yeah.
Like we wouldn't even be here. Just let them go. All right, there's Dr. Trevor. And here's Deli. Bill Dell, what's up, buddy? Missed you last week.
Not much. I was fishing. I think I sent you a picture.
I know that.
I was hitting a sulfur spinner fall while you guys were recording some podcasts. That was,
Catching a bunch of stockies.
they were fed good.
Posting them on your burner account.
Yep.
They were fed good.
Pellethogs.com.
Remember we talked about Bill's feed and what's in it and how the rest of us don't really see that stuff.
Right.
Pellet hogs. Anyway, that's good to have you here, bud. Matt Grobe all the way from Montana. What's up, bud? It's still light out there.
Still light out, baby.
Mhm.
Runoff started.
I like that boat podcast. You're going to need that boat with runoff starting.
We are. I got to listen to it.
Well,
I
it
got to
just came out
go
yesterday.
back through and listen to it. I'm excited.
Been less than 24 hours. We always record on Mondays, and I always publish the podcast Sunday nights. Last guy here, Austin. Austin Dando. Tell everybody what you're wearing.
That's a weird intro.
No. Like, come on. What
What's
are we
the
doing?
H stand for?
Yeah.
Henderson High School. I'm wearing
Henderson High School. What's the mascot from Henderson High School?
it's the Warriors.
Austin has a tank top that looks like he just got out of track and field practice.
I still have some old apparel,
What are you doing?
I record up in the attic, and when it gets to be this time of year, the attic gets warm. So I
Yeah.
wear some.
You
like-
should be in your underwear.
Well, we
you
can't see that
below.
part.
Yeah.
No. Look at this guy.
Like a weatherman.
So that is your high school.
It's my cross country.
Almost. It looks like a singlet. It looks like you're wrestling, and it's a singlet.
Yeah. Well, it's not.
Yeah,
Singlet would only have one shoulder strap, though, right, Austin?
It has two.
I think technically, no, this is a singlet.
Huh. Look at you, huh?
What's that picture in the back? Avalanche Lake?
That's a Broken Heels in Switzerland.
Oh.
Hey, look at that.
World traveler.
Hey now.
Hey now.
Nice.
They printed it for me. It's hanging in the brewery right now too.
What's your alma mater?
Henderson High School, Westchester, Henderson.
That's a really lame H right there. That's about as basic as
All
you
right,
can get.
So
Look at that.
Hey, can we get some Courier new T-shirts, please?
since you're going to bring it up, I will address this, okay?
Go ahead, Austin. Go ahead.
Henderson High School was undefeated for 7 years in cross country, never lost a meet. Multi-state champions in a
Pride
row.
there.
So our thing was, we didn't need to write our name on the jersey because everybody knew what the H stand for.
Hey now.
So all we would put on was H. They didn't eat the rest.
There. We dragged the pride out of them, right? Now it's on the table.
That's a good story.
Sounds elitist.
Well, you know.
You're just making a point.
All we did at Latrobe was wear the number 33 because of that's all we did was
Rolling Rock.
rolling around.
Pony balls.
All
I
right.
got.
We all have a history. Guys, let's do a couple questions. Let's do a couple questions before we get deep into our topic. Question number 1. Who wants to read this one? Volunteers?
I got it.
Hey, Matt Grobe.
Hey,
Here's
Matt
one
Grove.
from Andy Maines in Connecticut.
Yep.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes.
Hello, Troutbitten. I have a simple question about tying flies. What is your best material for tying parachute posts? I've seen a lot of different materials used and recommended, and I'd like to get the opinions from you guys. Andy, that's a wonderful question. You know what I like to use, Andy?
I bet I do.
White Widow's.
Dun-dun-dun.
Widow's
Yeah.
well.
This question was meant for you, Grove.
You can buy it in multiple colors, but I love the flotation capability of the Widow's web.
Does it mat together? Some fibers like mat together.
No, man, it stays good. It reacts well to dry shake and reapplicant. You know, when you reapplicate the gel, it just does it for me. But everybody's got their own preference.
I'm embarrassed to say that it's been like a year and a half since you started bragging about Widow's Web, and I still don't have it.
I gotta send you some.
Well, I could just buy it myself, couldn't I? So I'm wondering if it kind of has a crinkly fiber or it's a straight fiber.
I think of it as crinkly.
You have it, Trevor.
No, just based on the name. It's a web.
Why would
I think it's crinkly?
I would think most good parachute posts I think are crinkly. Yeah, I see that. He's holding it up. There's definitely some crinkle there.
Oh yeah,
some wave to it, right? A straight fiber is going to mat together. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody told me they use EP fibers for parachute posts, and I was thinking, I don't know how great that would be. You could probably see it in the color he chose. Maybe that's why he chose it, because of the color. But even there's some poly yarn that you can buy in a fly shop. I have some from one of our local fly shops from so many years ago, and I remember thinking this stuff doesn't float very well, and I came to learn that it's because it wasn't crinkly. The crinkle, let's say, the bit of waviness holds some air in between those fibers. There's room for air in between the waves of these multiple fibers that make up your parachute post. I use macrame yarn, the same stuff I use for the Dorsey yarn indicator. That's me. What about you guys?
I also use the Dorsey yarn.
I don't tie many parachutes.
Oh, this guy. Trevor has nothing. Deli?
I don't believe in parachutes either.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Compare dons or go home.
Oh, they exist.
Sorry, Andy Mains. So you got 3 pieces of advice and 2 of them are the same. Sorry, Andy, that's all we got, right?
Parachutes are like my favorite.
I know,
They're so
Austin.
easy to tie and they float forever. And
I don't want to argue about it.
No,
fish love them.
they're hard to tie.
Oh,
They're a pain in the butt.
Oh, my.
Compare don's way easier.
I agree.
They're way easier than
They
a
float
Catskill
better.
style.
Well, yeah, then cats.
You need some woodsmanship, Bill. Come on, man.
I don't think they float well at all.
Oh, he's using the wrong parachute.
Heavily hackled, they'll float forever.
I hackle the crap out of them.
Probably doesn't.
I bet you do.
I bet he does. Yeah. Bill's like, how much material can I put on this fly?
2 full hackles.
I've seen your elk hair caddis, though, and you definitely pack some materials onto a hook there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all got our thing. All right, so we half-assed answered question number 1. What about question number 2? Who's got this one? Who can read it? Mr. High School? Oh, never
Mr.
mind.
High School.
Trevor beat you to it.
Suck it. First one across the finish line.
Oh, yeah.
State.
That's you. Trevor Smith, doctor.
Yeah. This one is from Henry Barnes,
Mm-hmm.
who sent this question via email.
Yes, he did.
Dominic and all.
Mm.
So we're and all, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Not
me
good
and then
enough
there's
for a
you
name,
guys.
but
Right?
yeah.
He sent it to me, in fairness. Okay.
Dominic, etc.
Etc.
Et al. Right? That's what. That's the
Exactly.
credit in
Et al.
Literature. Go ahead.
Yeah. So thanks for these podcasts. Your talks together have been entertaining and informative.
Yeah.
My fishing partner and I often listen to the newest episode while we drive to the river together. He used to be a guide in Colorado before retiring some 15 years ago. We listened to your ethics of guiding episode, and you said not to guide the same spot all the time. My friend disagrees. He said he almost always guided one of just 2 spots. His reasoning is that he didn't want to give away other locations. Wouldn't this make sense because you guys are against spot burning? Discuss. Yeah, I mean, I do think you can make an argument, not even just based on spot burning, but if you assume that trout in a particular area are going to be affected for X number of hours or days after you fish over them, at least to some extent behaviorally, if you rotate between 4 or 5 spots versus 1 spot or 2 spots, you're exposing more fish to pressure. But I kind of think there's so many locations, like 2 spots versus 4 or 5 spots. I don't know. What realistically, Dom, in say maybe a week or 2, how many different spots do you go to?
Oh, let's say if I guide, I don't know, out of 10 trips, I probably guide 8 different spots. I might only repeat it if it was exceptional, and then I probably don't even fish the exact same water, but above or below In part, that's because I get bored. I don't know about bored, but I just like to continue to see that we have so much good water around here. I like to keep doing it that way. I think what Henry is saying, well, he's protective of the spot, or his buddy was protective of spots and like, oh, I don't want to give away this piece of water. When he was a guide, he was like, I don't want to show people this section of water over here, so I just always guide this one spot, then I'm only giving up this one spot. Is that how you take it? Henry's question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think his way of guiding was probably different than what Troutbitten's way of guiding was, right? If you're just I'm assuming he's taking clients in Colorado that maybe a tourist natured or whatnot, and you can get away with going to the same spot, you know, and people are taking in the scenery, catching one or two fish, and hand them some cash and be gone. Right? Mm-hmm. I feel like Troutbitten is trying to accomplish something different.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I get Henry's point. I chose this question. I had it a couple of times. I had people tell me, oh, I'm a guide and I tend to fish the same spots every week. Guys tell me like they'll rotate like just two or three spots because they don't want to show people their best stuff, for example. I don't really approach it that way. I've had multiple people tell me, oh, I don't really guide where I play, or I don't guide, my favorite water. I kind of do, to be quite honest. So much of it is my favorite, I suppose. I just keep rotating. I just like to see what's out there. I just kind of guide the way that I would fish. And in fairness, and like Matt said, I mean, things are different here, and there's so much good water. It's all good. You don't need a guide to show you what's good in our area. If it looks good, it is. There's a lot of nice water. Mm-hmm. And I just like to keep moving through it day after day.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what he's defining as a spot. So is he defining a spot as an access point?
Nice.
Or is he defining it as a hole?
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing he's talking about an access point.
Yeah, Bill.
And maybe he's in Colorado and those rivers are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so he might not be fishing that same spot because, hey, maybe that river's 50 yards wide and that access point has access to 2 or 3 miles of river.
That's a good point too.
Like we could consider a spot like, hey, you park here, but you could walk upstream and downstream 2 or 3 miles from that spot you park. And so it'd be interesting to know what he's defining as a spot.
It would be.
I would hope he's not guiding the same like 30 yards of water.
That's how I took it. But yeah, you bring up a good point. I kind of took it the opposite. You ever pass a guide while you're fishing and then you come back like 3 hours later, 4 hours later, and they're in almost the same water, the same hole? Mm-hmm. Like that's not how we guide.
Yeah.
But the spot to me means that. Like, oh, I'm fishing that tail out.
Yeah.
Or that whatever, that pool over and over and over. And that's not how we guide. But I understand. I understand if people do.
Yeah. I also think, you have a fair amount of clients that aren't from here, right? And I do think that probably gives you a little more freedom to say like, hey, these people traveled in from 8-10 hours, 5-6 hours away. They're not coming back this weekend. And so it gives you a little more freedom to say, guide wherever you want.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'll just wrap it up this way. We said in the Ethics of Guiding podcast, we guide for education. People come to Troutbitten to learn stuff, and you can learn whatever you need to learn in so many different pieces of water. And again, it's not like the next piece. I don't feel like I need to protect anything. There's so much water out here. We go to some great rivers and fish some great water. And there it is. Then you can go upstream, like Bill said. You could walk 3 miles upstream, and there's more great water there, and then fish on the way down. Who knows? Good question, though. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the questions coming in. There's way more than we're going to have a chance to answer. I will say, and most of you who have, if we don't answer your question here, I usually email you back. You know that. Most of you already realize that. Keep them coming. We appreciate it. You guys ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Heck yeah.
The landscape is changing for trout anglers. No doubt you've already noticed another truck at your favorite access point and seen more anglers on the water. For those looking for new challenges and fishing opportunities, Trout Routes has the data to help you avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Trout Routes has mapped more than 50,000 trout streams across the country with curated, detailed maps of public land and access points. Trout Routes has developed integrated and interactive data, putting the tools in your hands to research new water and help you navigate in the wild to know exactly where you stand in the current. It's still up to you to find those deep pools and undercuts, but Trout Routes helps you get on the water, connecting you with resources like fly shops and stream gauges for trout water across the country. Download Trout Routes in the App Store today and visit troutroutes.com to learn more. For over a decade, Smith Creek has designed and built outstanding gear for the serious angler. Smith Creek's net holster is the perfect solution to hold your favorite net. I've been using mine every day on the water for over 9 years. Its ergonomic design helps you draw your net quickly when you need it, while keeping your net firmly in place and out of the way when you don't. Made from rugged materials and hand-assembled, Smith Creek's net holster is built to last. All Smith Creek gear is backed by their outstanding customer service no matter where or when you bought it. To stay up to date on their latest specials, follow Smith Creek on Instagram at SmithCreekNZ. Quality you can depend on from a brand you can trust. Smith Creek. All right, like I said in the intro, this is this quality of woodsmanship, for lack of a better word, might be tough to nail down with a name that suits it perfectly, but I think we know what this is, right? I mean, you guys want to start there kind of with defining the terms. That's important, right? As long as we all know what we're kind of talking about, whether it's woodsmanship, Bill said being an outdoorsman, an outdoorsmanship. What are we talking about?
I think it's just, for me, I guess I've grown up just being outside.
Yeah.
Like it started, I grew up on a farm, had a pond, had like a patch of woods. And so I've always been outside, whether it be in a river, in a pond, playing in the mud. And so I guess for me, I've grown up being comfortable outside.
Yeah.
And away from the house. And so I guess that's the first step, is when you're out and away from technology and roads and you're hiking 2 or 3 miles in, I guess the first step is becoming comfortable in that surrounding.
Yeah.
Totally.
So what was the word to describe that? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, right. If anybody has, I texted you guys like, what should we call this? I like the word woodsmanship, but it doesn't. I wish there was like a riversmanship. It doesn't make sense. You can't say that.
The only thing about woodmanship is you can think of it as like a woodworker a little bit. You know what I mean? It kind of, I don't know if it's the best.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, if you Google woodsmanship, it's all about hunting and being in the woods.
Sure.
And Trevor, you could speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. I was going to read the definition given in the Project Upland magazine, because I really liked that one, actually.
Please.
So it says that woodsmanship is a collection of firsthand experiences and a familiarity with biology, animal behavior, weather, and the very land you hunt and fish. I'm adding fish in there. Hunt and fish, among other things. Combining this knowledge helps you to subconsciously make decisions and take actions that put you in an informed situation, increasing your potential for success. Woodsmanship comes with time, and there will be lots of failure. Anyone telling you anything to the contrary is probably trying to sell you something.
I like that. That was good.
Well, then that's what it is.
Right? It's, that collection of experiences that I try to think of it even like in medicine, what's the benefit of going through residencies like we all go through, where for 3 or 4 years you work like a dog and you're just like inundated with experience after experience after experience of sick patients. The benefit is after 3-4 years, you've put in 10 years worth of work of just learning what sick patients look like, what they act like, how they go downhill, how they get better, how to fix this, and you begin to develop an intuition that could only come from experience. It could only come from repetition and failure. And I feel the same thing applies to the outdoors, where you can't substitute anything for sheer time on the water and time in the woods to develop real woodsmanship, in my opinion, where you begin to have an actual intuition for the way that an animal is going to behave and act. And like he says, put yourself in better positions for success.
I like the word intuition, because to me that means you're not thinking about it much.
Right.
You just almost naturally understand things.
Like an instinct.
Yes. Austin?
You can kind of feel what's coming next a little bit. That comes with weather too. Like I'm similar to you, Bill. Grew up on a fair amount of property with woods around, a stream running through the yard, and you kind of just you learn that environment as a home and not some place that you step into that feels foreign. And I think the more time you spend in those places, the more you know what to expect, given the weather conditions or previous days or oncoming days. You just kind of get that in your blood a little bit.
Yeah, seeing what the seasons bring. We're supposed to get an inch of rain on Wednesday. And without kind of thinking much about it, I kind of know what that's going to do to these rivers because I already know what state each of them are in.
Right, exactly.
Same as where you were this weekend, Austin.
Yeah.
You knew it was fishable, right? And you knew how to fish it. You've been around that river for a long time, but even how you grew up, you saw what rain does to rivers.
Right. And you learn to kind of, predict it so you know when your chances are going to exist and when they're not. And you have to take advantage of those time windows. But you can catch it in different stages of that rain. It's just up to you to have learned that or have lived that.
Yeah, for sure. I think woodsmanship and, I don't know, riversmithing, something, it's, just suggesting a term.
I thought of that.
How about river smart?
River smart.
Being river smart.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think when you see it, you really can recognize it as well. And I'd love to become similar to some of the men that I've gotten to interact with who I've grown to respect in those areas so much over the years. And I don't feel that I've attained like the level that I want to in those regards, even through countless hours and years in the woods and on the river. But it really is impressive. I have people that represent each one of those kind of areas to me a little bit, but some of the guys that I hunt with just understand animal behavior and particularly deer behavior to a level that to them, they're just kind of thinking through what they would do if they were in that situation as the deer. And they've just grown this ability to predict and kind of think like, all right, it's the coldest morning this week. The humidity's high. There's a southwest wind. I'm pretty sure that these factors are going to lead to the deer traveling through more cover, and the acorns were bad this year, and the corn just got cut on this farm, and and they just sort of put these pieces together and come up with a predicted strategy, and it's just fun to watch, especially when it works. And there's a percentage of time for those guys that it works that's higher than for the rest of us, And I think on the water too, when you step in the water, I've heard you say before, Dom, that you wait till you're on the water to start, one, tying your tippet on, and then two, just kind of selecting your fly. And I think there's something cool about, as you're walking into the river, even you're gathering intel and information, whether it's the temperature, whether it's how still the water is, what the, clarity is. And as you step into the water and sort of gain those final pieces of information almost physically as the water's passing by you, you sort of come to a decision about what you're going to do that's based on the compilation of all of those individual data points.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
And I think that makes a great angler, right?
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I think that time spent on the water isn't everything. It's a lot, but there's so many other factors that you have to take it to that next level. So one, you have to be out on the water. We all know that, right? You have to have real experiences. You have to fail a lot, but you have to have that drive to want to continue to learn, whether that's books, stream gauges, other buddies, forums, right? Constantly talking, bouncing ideas off of everybody. I think that goes along with hunting, fishing, anything you do in life, right? The people that succeed at stuff always go the extra mile to perform at a high level. I firmly believe that. And so oftentimes it's not, you mentioned, I think in the beginning, Don, they people look natural, right? All the work, like Ben Roethlisberger looked natural at year 15, right? But all that time and effort he spent, right? At some point you get rewarded with that, but it's grueling to get to that point. I say grueling. You guys know what I mean. I don't mean it that, but yeah, there's a level of that, right? There's a level of intensity that's required in my experience to get to that.
It's a good point.
Intensity is a good word. And Trevor, in your definition, what stood out to me is that you said failure was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And that's part of what's grueling, I think, Matt, is one failure after another. I said to somebody last week when I was guiding, I said, we're going to try this. It probably won't work, but we're going to try it. And he kind of chuckled at me. I said, no, I'm serious. It probably won't work. I said, maybe not 90, but maybe 75% of the stuff we try out here, like we got an idea or a theory. We're trying something different because what we were doing well. And then I said, well, let's change it. And I almost expected it not to work because it usually doesn't, And then all of a sudden, bang, ooh, there we go. I'm glad I made that third or fourth change because now the odds are in my favor. One of these things is going to work. Anyway, failure after failure after failure brings up those data points or builds up those data points. And that's the biggest deal. We're talking about time on the water, but it's time on the water with a expectation almost to fail or an acceptance that, okay, I'm going to fail. I'm going to try it and I'm going to fail. I'm going to try it. I'm going to fail. And I kind of enjoy the failure. I tell people often that that didn't work. We can learn something because that didn't work. We can learn because we didn't catch fish there, but that's a nice presentation. We did exactly what we were trying to do. Okay, they're not going to eat that fly with that rig in that way, whatever we were trying to do. And we just learned something. Didn't work. Failure. And yet those failures obviously are kind of success in a way.
Sure.
You're learning.
Totally.
It's important, I think, to capitalize on the failures in a way that you can, whether you put them into a data bank or a database or memory. Some of us have like photographic memories when it comes to these things.
Like deli.
I can't remember a lot of things, but I can remember the specific hatch, what I was using, time of year, flows. And I jot down notes on all that as well. But I find that some of the better anglers I'm with really reach back into those databases and extract the important information. And the folks that maybe are stuck in a certain progression in their angler life tend to forget. You did this last year, remember? The water was high, or those particular insects weren't hatching at that time, blah blah blah. You get what I'm saying? I think that's super important to note.
Sure. Looping back to the comment you made, Grobe, I really like that you identified sort of that factor of like being hungry almost, or that like hunger for information. And I think that is something that it's the reason that we exist, right, as Troutbitten, and it's sort of what pulls us all together in the first place, is that there's something in us, almost genetically, I think, that just has this like hunger and thirst for the knowledge about what we're doing. And it's not because we want to catch one more fish than our buddy, or we want to catch the biggest fish in this group, or it's not any one of those singular factors, but it's that we want to be excellent at what we're doing and we want to get better at what we're doing.
Sure.
And there's just this drive to consume knowledge, to compare that knowledge, to share the knowledge, and when you have a group like this where that information can be shared in a fun and safe, as in, our information is safe with each other.
Yeah.
And yet we're using it to help drive each other towards the goal that we're all trying to achieve, which is just to become more excellent fishermen and
riversmiths. Is that what we're using? You like the last part of that word.
Yeah, I know. Got a dog in that fight, but I don't know.
Bill, you got something?
I think the failure part, when we're talking about failure, I think at some point you have to accept that you're going to go out on days that are not going to fish well. Because it'll teach you a lot.
Sure.
Because, you're never, if you always say, hey, it's condition X, well, I don't fish in that condition.
Yeah.
Well, then you're never going to learn that. And so maybe you fish in condition X and maybe you fail and hey, I go out and I catch one fish the 3 times that it's, I don't know, bright and sunny and 90 degrees. But then like the 4th time I go out, I change my strategy and I fish a different way. Maybe I catch 5 fish. But like you have to be willing to, when you fail, you have to reset and say, okay, I did my tactic didn't meet the conditions of that day. And like it all, to me, like in my brain and all the conditions and everything make kind of like a Venn diagram and everything starts to overlap. And so you're thinking about, okay, sun, wind, rain and all these different conditions that have happened. Like, and then the other factor is like the human pressure and how are the people affecting those fish. And you have to kind of, you put all that stuff into this crazy equation. And then that would, hopefully through years of experience of seeing where people fish when it's pressured, seeing when it's sunny, what parts of the river are shady. And so all of that kind of comes together, and it's not something that you can learn like 15, 20 days on a river. To me, if you're going to know a river, you've got to be 100 days plus on that river system. At least in all times of the year.
Right on. So I do hear us saying a lot. We're focusing on time on the water. That's where I think all this comes from. This riversmithing. Heard us woodsmanship, being an outdoorsman. Okay, time on the water, time on the water. But I do think it goes deeper than that. And I'm making that argument. I was thinking about this a lot. My goal with my boys, I've said this before, was to just get them around the water. I mean, when they were less than 1 year old, I had them out in a baby backpack just so they could smell the river, just be around it. I wanted to be around it, and then I was with the boys. And then when they were 2 and 3 and 6 and 7, and still now, just go for a walk beside the river. I simply wanted the boys to be comfortable around the river. That was my goal with the boys. And I say was because they are. They're both very comfortable around the river, wherever we go. And Joey will often just ride his bike down and just kind of goof around, not even fish. And I love to see that. And Aiden is involved with fishing in different ways. He's been fishing lakes and fishing for crappie and stuff with spinning rods. Great. He has a fishing buddy here in the neighborhood, and he was fishing 2 times this weekend. Good for him, right? He's comfortable around the river, the water, not just the river, but just comfortable. I continue to say that. I'm bringing it up because I think this is a big deal. I think this is a big part of it. That was my goal for my boys because I know that I was comfortable in the woods, comfortable around water. I didn't feel unsafe, let's say. I always felt like I can handle myself in the water. It was a big deal. It's not a mystery to me. And then I was thinking about this when I was running today, that the night fishing, and you guys have all done some of this. For me, it took me about 50 trips. I'm not exaggerating. About 50 trips for me to really feel comfortable, like in my element, not like I was an outsider in the dark, but I was like, okay. I'm not scared of it. I'm not scared of anything. I'm not, uncomfortable. I felt settled. I felt like I was part of the environment. I felt like I knew what to expect. I was starting to just make decisions about, tactics and what water to choose and where to move and where to go and how to fish almost intuitively because I'd done it again, like 50 times. There, I'm back to the time on the water. I will say that all of those day trips and even growing up, walking the ravine behind my house where my parents had a few acres and just goofing around in that little ditch of water, like that all got me to this point where I like to think I have some woodsmanship, if that's what we're calling it. I'm really comfortable in the woods and especially around the water. I get it, And then that eventually all set me up, like I'm saying, for the night fishing. But it still took quite a bit of time.
So I guess what you're saying is you have to establish your comfort zone. And then once you have that, then you can kind of start to dive into your observations, right? If you're not comfortable, your senses are going to be off.
Thank you.
And so you have to be comfortable in your surroundings. And then you can kind of dial in your senses and, start to really observe things. Like I think some of the biggest things that I've kind of turned over as things that I think have helped me of like, okay, I'm comfortable on this river and now let me kind of just observe. And over time, like we're talking about over time, but just every so often you pick up like a little nugget, like, okay, I saw a fish. We talked about caddis, like, caddis like to be in bushes. And so like you may pick up and say, okay, well now I realize, hey, if I put that thing, 2 inches from that bush and I consistently do that a couple times up this riverbank, I'll probably catch a fish. But if I didn't see that fish rise a couple times at some point in my life, maybe I wasn't comfortable and I was in a rush and I wasn't, kind of taking my time to observe what was happening in the situation I was in. I think you kind of have to have kind of situational awareness. Like, okay, here's the situation I'm in, and how can I use myself as a puzzle piece to fit in for that day?
You did a nice job there, and thank you for explaining why it's important to be comfortable. I was saying I think comfort's a big part of it. I was thinking, if you put me in a city, like I remember last time I went down to Philly to give a presentation.
Or Buenos Aires.
Or, sure, Buenos Aires when we traveled. I was glad that Austin was holding my hand, right? If you put me in a city, I feel like I'm aware of every step that I'm making, like every step. I'm thinking about where I am, and I can't stop wondering about the rules and the expectations. How should I be doing this? Should I not go here? Should I? Cities are just foreign to me. I simply don't know how things work. And I think a lot of people feel that way, or some people feel that way about rivers at first. Oak and Oscar is an American watch company that does things the right way, not the easy way, crafting mechanical timepieces that combine Swiss precision with American know-how. Oak and Oscar was founded in 2015, named after the owner's love of bourbon and his dog Oscar. Their watches are built to withstand even the most adventurous fly angler. Our very own Austin Dando has been putting his Olmsted to the test since last year. Oak and Oscar is a watch company that loves fly fishing. Visit their website at oakandoscar.com/troutbitten. Mark your time on the water with Oak and Oscar.
I agree with all that. I think we have to be cautious of throwing around the word comfortable a little bit, in the sense of every all those 50 days leading up to your success was uncomfortable, right, for you, but that was productive. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to understand what we're talking about in the sense of comfortable and also being uncomfortable, because your growth as a woodsman, right, is going to be fairly, it's going to be dictated by the level of uncomfortability you put yourself through to continue to grow. So what we're saying is, we always put ourselves in uncomfortable, like night fishing, right? You were eager to fish at night and made yourself uncomfortable, but you came out a better angler, right? And so that goes into every stage of angling. You might get nymphing, but you're going to make yourself uncomfortable with dry fly fishing and then streamer fishing, right?
Nice.
And so that whole package is needed. You need to understand all that in order to be successful.
That's nice. Good point.
Tom, it kind of reminds me, one time I was down watching you play music at Bar Blue, and I was talking to Renee, bass player, right?
Renee was our bass player for Ted and the Hi-Fi's.
That's right. And I was talking a little bit about recording music and how I wanted it to sound good and sound a certain way. And he said, Austin, always be willing to suck. and you know what? That stuck with me quite a lot, and it sticks with me through everything else too.
That's right.
Fishing outside, I'm learning how to hunt. I'm not a good hunter. I'm very willing to suck, but the only reason you get any better is if you're willing to do that. And if you expect success or the easy button to be the first thing you experience, well, it's not going to last for you.
That's great. That's great advice from Renee Witzke.
Timeless.
It is. And we can learn these things in so many different ways. And Trevor, it is cool to have you here because you do have such a deep hunting experience. And so I was thinking about these other outdoor activities. So Bill, you brought up the idea of, instead of saying woodsman, maybe we could say outdoorsman. You start to look around at like the way other people think of or define outdoorsman. It's like, well, there's a lot of other outdoor activities that kind of go with it. And I'm not sure all those outdoor activities necessarily apply to angling. Well, not necessarily all of the woodsmanship stuff applies directly to angling, but I think a lot more than like, does golf help you dial this angling game in? Does golf really make you more comfortable outdoors? What about playing baseball?
Right.
Both of those are like manufactured. They're man-made places, right? A baseball diamond is man-made. A baseball park, obviously a golf course is groomed. It doesn't hurt you.
Sure.
But does it really help you be a woodsman, right? Or a real outdoorsman?
No.
It might slightly give you more hand-eye coordination.
Sure.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a great point. It's not bad
Tom,
for you.
When you read off all those, this is my occupation, but I immediately think of recreate. And so we didn't talk about that, but recreate, to me, those types of things could give you added value into the woodsmanship realm when I'm recreating outside, whether that's backcountry skiing or hiking, right? And you're spending time in the mountains. I don't think of golf, baseball, and bicycling like on the road necessarily as those things. I think of those as sports. And that, to your point, I don't know if that helps in what we're talking about.
It's just so unique, I think angling and fishing, and I think trapping would probably be in there as a form of hunting maybe, but and you could probably argue that some people that bird or are into birding, maybe they've got a little bit of that. Yeah. But I do think it's pretty unique to have a behavioral understanding of an animal. And I think as I'm saying that, I'm thinking even like some of the photographers for like, Planet Earth or National Geographic, they're trying to learn animal behavior to a point that they can predict movement and be in the right place at the right time. But I do think there's a limited subset of things. And like if you separate out woodsmanship into like the physical skill of casting a fly rod as an athletic skill, you can certainly apply a lot of sports. And we've talked about guitar and like having rhythm being helpful when it comes to understanding the cadence of a cast. But you really have to parse it out into those individual parts if you're going to start to do that. Like orienteering, right? Helpful for maybe getting yourself around in the woods. But if you put a world-class orienteer, competitor up again who's never hunted or fished, I don't think he has a whole lot to offer when it comes to stepping in the water and catching a fish. So I do think the word woodsmanship to me just kind of contains this global sense of the skill to use the tool, the understanding of the behavior of the animal that you're seeking. You have to be a good entomologist in some ways, right? To be a good riversmith. You have to, there's just so many cool aspects to it that almost have to all be there in order to really be a complete angler, a complete woodsman.
Nice.
And without any one, you could be a really excellent at predicting what the fish are going to eat. But if you can't cast, you will be limited, right? Or you could be the best caster in the world, most beautiful tight loops, and have no idea what to put on the end of that line, right?
Sure. And you have to be able to understand the river too.
Yeah.
You're talking about the species, and it's a lot the environment and what that river is going to do and how the trout are going to respond to what the river is doing, because maybe it's windy or whatever. You got a shot of rain upstream. I was guiding last week and all of a sudden the river came up. I mean, there had to be like a flash, like a thunderstorm upstream. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, what is happening? And we saw branches, you know what I mean? Debris coming down through.
Was it last Wednesday? That's what happened to me.
Yeah, I think it was.
I was like, oh,
yeah.
It was coming up. It was coming up. And I was like, I got to get back across the river now.
It happened quickly. Well, so I was thinking of kayaking. I told you guys before, one of the best anglers I've ever met. Well, one of the best anglers I've ever met who's so good at reading water was a kayaker, really good, like a competitive kayaker. I mean, he knew where the currents were going to go. And that's a big advantage. That's a skill that, transfers for sure.
I think there's a lot out there. Like the longer I'm outside, outdoors, or on the river, everything kind of correlates. Like, I don't know, I've started to pay more attention to birds and some of the migration because I've been getting into a little bit of photography. Sure. And like, I'm noticing like some of the birds that are migrating into the area kind of correspond with some of the hatches we have. some of the
No
flowers that come out are often, like, if you read a lot of the books, they will indicate, okay, the Hendricksons are going to hatch, the sulfurs are going to hatch, or, different trees and blossom or bloom. Like, it all kind of, like, understanding all of that really helps you to be more well-rounded and be able to predict things, like, so that you can set yourself up for success.
Yeah, that is good.
And as listening to Bill talk, there's also a regional learning. And I just experienced this, right? 10 years ago, coming out here, where all my deep woods learnings from hunting and fishing in Pennsylvania, set me up. It was a good starting block, but it's also, I had to relearn so much about climates and elevation, snowmelt, and how it impacts different drainages, and different animal species to be really mindful of when you're seeing fresh tracks. And so it's cool because you can constantly challenge yourself and feel, I felt uncomfortable for a while, right? I mean, so that regionality of things is real. But you get a good core base and you can translate it anywhere, but no matter if you go to different places, there's always different learnings.
You're right about that core base. That's a good way to put it. Matt, the first time I went to Montana, for like 2 or 3 days, I felt really small because the valleys were so big. And I mean it. Like, I felt small and kind of weak almost. And I remember though thinking, like, I'm going to hey, that's nice. I was fishing one of your favorite rivers, and I'm thinking, that's a nice piece of water. I'm going to get out there and fish the middle of that. No, I wasn't going to fish the middle of it. I tried. Anyway, it took some reining in of my expectations, but I was able to adapt because I did have that core, that base of experience back here. And you can take it anywhere. And you're going to have it. You're never going to lose it. And there's so much of it that is transferable, and then more experience and more experience.
Before we start getting a lot of comments on being elite again, and that you have to start this when you're young, right? Well, I think like you can begin to work at this at any age, but obviously you're going to be at an advantage the longer you've been able to spend doing one of these. Just like I think for me, hunting set a foundation that then fishing kind of continued, and now both feed each other, I think, in many ways. But you can certainly be an excellent woodsman and just fly fish, or just hunt, or I think those pursuits have a lot of transferable skills. But I do think it's really nice to have both as part of your life, because I do think they feed each other in many ways. Dom, I know you've dabbled a little bit in hunting. And do you feel, to put you on the spot, do you feel like any of your experiences hunting in any way fed your woodsmanship in a way that you've seen tangibly in fishing?
Well, I've only shot a couple squirrels, Trevor.
I helped to drag the one back. Once we put them on the scale.
You haul them up on the tailgate for me.
You do know.
I'm not very good at it, Trevor. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've told you guys I want to get into turkey hunting someday. I've spent a lot of time. I don't know, 40 hours, 50 hours. I know that's not that much. Hunting, actually out there hunting. I shouldn't say a lot. I've spent some time, right?
Yeah.
Has that actually helped my fishing? No, I would say almost no. I can't think of any way directly, no. But I'm going to say guiding has, in the way that it makes me just look at things instead of fishing. So I'm out there and I'm just observing. And I wanted to say that about hunting, right? And the slowing down, it's such a different pace when I was hunting, and I was just hunting squirrels. But I had to slow down, and I hardly ever walked through the woods that way. And you could say that's definitely a good thing to do when you're fishing. But once again, I would say that guiding is kind of what taught me that. Like, I'm slowing down. I'm not going to go as fast as I usually do on most days. And I'm really, while they're fishing, I'm looking for the next thing. Like, what should we change to next? Where should we fish next? That kind of thing. Oh, we've talked about it, Trevor, you and I. Like, I can see I'm looking forward to getting into hunting deeper. There's a lot there, obviously transferable skills.
I grew up hunting and fishing, and so I think hunting, it's a little bit different mindset, but it's also, there's some things that correlate to fishing. Like, I think about hunting, one of the big things we always looked for were like deer funnels, right? Where the deer are going to kind of get pushed to or funneled to based on the terrain around it. And so I think that can be transferred to fishing.
Old Billy Dell back in Mount Pleasant was just looking for a deer drive.
Mount Pleasant.
Shoving him right through that funnel, and he was standing on the other side.
That's why he's got his trout whistle.
That's right.
Sorry,
so
Bill.
I think,
Send them all through the chute.
but yeah, I think you can, I think that kind of that same thing kind of transfers, I think, to fishing. Like if you think about like, how the stream is made up and when it narrows and when it kind of funnels down, and it often creates a hole and gets deep. And so that, to me, that's kind of similar thing between the two activities.
That's neat.
That is neat.
I got one quick thing for you. When I drive into, if I see a bunch of game, if I see, turkey and deer, and I've seen fox and bear, I mean, all on the same trip in to that spot that we love so much, I feel like the trout are active as well.
Yeah,
I agree.
Have you noticed that? Do you believe that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I see nothing,
Yeah.
it might be a little slow.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen the same thing at night when animals are out running around on the drive into the river at night.
Sure.
Yes.
Something
yes.
about that
For sure.
correlates to the fishing. Gives you a little bit of excitement.
Yep.
Totally.
Till you run into one in your car.
Sure.
Well, yeah. So Trevor, you said we're going to be accused of, being elite, acting like, okay, we grew up doing this, so we know it. We don't know everything, obviously, but I guess we're going to have people out there wondering, is there any substitute for being out there? Maybe you didn't grow up on a river, or you didn't grow up in the woods, and now you're 60 years old and you want to pick up fly fishing.
The only
trout.
substitute is a guide, because the guide has that knowledge and he
You
can
think?
for the day, right? The guide is basically walking you through the day and how, like where to go, how to combat the situation you're in, and so on. Like, I guess to me, that's the one thing a guide can provide, that your tactics, like you can learn tactics and you can learn everything else. But if you fly into a river from, 8 states away, the guide is your only resource to help you through the day.
You should tell the guide that that's how you would like to approach the day, though, too. Like, tell the guide, like, hey, let's fish how you would.
Yeah.
Tell me why you would make the decisions. Let's move when you would move and all that stuff. Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. Precision Fly and Tackle is a family-owned business with a passion for the outdoors and a sense of adventure. They are anglers who enjoy every moment spent on the water with family and friends. Precision Fly and Tackle carries the widest selection of Euro rods, reels, lines, leaders, flies, and accessories. From the beginner to the advanced angler, Precision Fly and Tackle can outfit every angler, no matter the budget. Visit them online at precisionflyandtackle.com. Then use code TROUTBITTEN10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your order. Gear up with Precision Fly and Tackle for your next adventure.
I think everybody has, everyone's going to have their own pace as to how quickly they pick that stuff up or how quickly they observe certain things or kind of absorb the information. But if you've never been out there, then, the next step is just, going out there and enjoying it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a substitute to get the real, in-depth knowledge versus head knowledge. We talk about head knowledges versus experiences, and you can get a fair amount from watching videos and kind of knowing what you may encounter out there a little bit. But it's not until you start collecting those personal experiences where it can kind of make you draw your own conclusions.
Sure. And I think we've been pretty black and white on the fact that, look, if you're going out there and you're 60 years old and you have a list of things you want to accomplish in that day and you walk away happy, we're not here to tell you to change that, right? We're essentially communicating to, look, if you walk away with your head down and you're upset you didn't catch, these fish, that's what we're talking about here. These are the steps to take to gain that skill set or that experience, and we're just kind of saying that if you start that at age 60 and you're walking off the river with your head down and upset, well, it's hard where the time is, right, and where you're at in life in order to get to a certain level, right? Experience, timing on the water, you can't make up for lost time, right? and that's hard to do, but if you're happy,
That's fair.
No shame there, man. Good for you. Get out there, you're smiling, you're out in nature, and that's a win.
Completely agree.
Totally.
Nice.
Totally agree.
Anything else, guys?
One other thing, I'll loop back to what we were talking about. It's funny because I hunted a lot, right? I used to be a big archery hunter, and I grew up hunting. And I always, and when I look back at it now, I have purposely not picked up my bow or my gun since I moved here. And I find it, now that I'm looking back at it, I have this craving to hunt again. But I actually feel like I've become a better angler because I focused on that one thing year round. And that whole fall for me, Trevor, I'm curious to hear what you think. Like, I was like fish spawning or all that stuff was alien to me, but it was mostly because I spent every hour I could chasing deer, turkey. Do you feel that way, Trevor, a little bit?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I do. And I think night fishing was a bit of a gem for me in finding something that I could do during the hottest months when even the water was low and the temps weren't always behaving, because it gave me 3 more months that were guaranteed that I could be on the water. And that expanded otherwise, my deep winter to spring season of fishing that then also traded places for hunting in the fall. And I agree completely. I think maybe from a global perspective, like my overall woodsmanship is like benefiting from the two. Right. I think my individual pursuit of either suffers just because I'm not doing just one. And I know the guys that are super into either one, I think you can accelerate at a quicker rate if you just focus on one, for sure. But, like back to our point about what makes you happy at any given time. I think I just am like, it's all, it's all gold. It's all
fun.
Me, right. Yeah, exactly. It's all great.
I'm getting to that. It's come full circle to me where I'm like, man, I see these guys elk hunting and everything. And that's a whole thing out here, right? Like it's easy. It's harder to elk hunt than it is to whitetail hunt. And that's like back home. Sure. Well, I was comfortable hunting whitetails. So there's just this whole learning curve. And I'm like, man, 1, my wife has to be ready. 2, I have to be ready, right? Yep. And I have young kids right now, and I'm like, it's not the right time for me to dive back into this. But it will sooner than later. I'm going to be ready.
That's smart, honestly.
It is smart.
Not to try to do too much at once. Totally. I mean, that's a tough thing when you have young kids. I remember feeling like that. And I'm like, man, I want to do this. I want to do that.
Pick and choose.
You got to be disciplined. And somewhat disciplined about it. Let me wrap it up then by asking really Bill's question is, which is more important then? Let's say woodsmanship or river knowledge, or technical skill, the ability to cast and the techniques. Which is more important? Quick answer.
If we're going for fish in the net, technical skill would matter at the end of the day to me, because if you can't put the fly in the water and get it to drift halfway decent, you're going to be at a loss.
Fair.
I would say river knowledge, because you have to know where to put that fly before you can cast it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just like the idea of river knowledge being more important, or like the woodsmanship piece. And I think, Austin, you have a good point and a good argument. But I like to think that if you have, like, the harder one to learn is years and years and years of developing your river knowledge and your woodsmanship. And I think, like, if you're athletic or you have good rhythm or you have like this physical intuition, you can pick up. Honestly, I think people can learn to fly cast in a weekend, and not to become experts, but I think they can learn to cast with enough proficiency that they can catch fish if they have the other knowledge already, if we're assuming a situation in which they've got that.
Let me jump in front of you, Bill, and give my answer. I'd say short term, I'm with Austin. Short term, like one day, I think those skills matter, especially if somebody points to you and says, cast there, somebody with that river knowledge. But let's say long term, and like if you're going out day after day and through a season of fishing, long term, then I think the riversmithing perhaps would mean more. What do you think, Bill? It's your question. What's your answer?
So I got a couple points.
Yeah.
To me, it's all levels, right? You have levels of river knowledge, you have levels of your technical ability. And as you build both of those up over time, at some point, if you spend enough time in both of those, the better fisherman you'll be. And I do think if you limit yourself by one of them, then in the end, it'll be a detriment to yourself. We talk about getting out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone with technique and get out of your comfort zone with like your river knowledge. Like go to a different spot. Like the worst thing you can do is go fish the same spot that you do in the river every time you go see it. Go see a different section of river. Explore the river and learn what it has to offer. To me, I think river knowledge is more important because I could take someone that could barely cast to the end of their rod tip and probably put them on fish where they would catch, a handful a day. Because if you had the knowledge to go somewhere that a fish has never seen a fly, the presentation has nothing to do with it at that point.
True. You're going to find more gullible
So what
fish.
if I drop...
Find the dumb ones.
What if I dropped one of you in a river you'd never been before, never seen it, don't know anything about it?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you'd have a better advantage because of your skills or because of your ability to know how that water moves? And how to read it and how to have the intuition about what's going on there?
I think that what you just said would be more important than the skills. And I find it out here all the time. Yeah. You put someone from Pennsylvania in a water out here and they're not, it takes a while. Austin, you did it, right? Like there had to have been a learning curve and you're reading the water differently, right? And I had the skills. I didn't have the intuition necessarily or the complete understanding of how the rivers functioned out here and what the trout like to do and the different species and how they spawn at different times. I mean, all that was new, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
Austin, I'll go back to to answer your question, I'll go back to the comfort word. If you're not comfortable in that water, it doesn't matter how well you can cast. We've all seen it, What do you think the percentage of anglers is that really does have, let's say, this woodsmanship?
I think it's 10 or under.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Small percentage, right?
Yeah. And I think some don't care.
We're really,
right?
Generalizing, but yeah.
I think a lot don't care.
And that's fair too. Yeah.
There's a lot that not care, but I also would say like in our areas, I do see a lot of people that are into it.
Yeah.
And they're seeking out these beautiful places to fish for a reason.
Yeah.
I do see that more of that in places that are sought after from the angling community.
Yeah. Austin, what's your answer on your own question?
I guess I was thinking about the situation more as which would I rather have, like any ability to fish at all with skills versus like being a really good kayaker who knows how the water moves. And if I was going to step on a stream and say I want to catch a fish that day, I'd probably rely more on my skills than I would like what the water was doing. That's how I was processing that question. But hearing Grobe talk about, transitioning to out west, I mean, you're exactly right. Learning how to take a huge river and condense it down and learn about, what's really under there and how to read what seems like, well, the same thing for a couple 100 feet. Didn't come naturally at first, but spending hours and hours and hours floating and wading through it all, you get to kind of, receive it. So maybe you can't have one without the other if you want to be successful.
There you go. I think so too, right? I mean, I think these kinds of topics are always cool, I think, because there's no right or wrong answer. And there's so many different ways to look at it. like you say, Austin, you have to have some kind of skills. Like we're almost taken for granted. Like, okay, we have some skills, but like, are we really? What would we like to be most? Let's say expert level at the woodsmanship or the skills, the casting skills. You know, there's so many different ways to look at it.
It's hard to get one without the other too. Because if you're getting to be an expert in skills, well, that probably means you've been out there a lot and have by chance learned quite a bit about your water.
And failed.
Am I the only geek
Yes.
who grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes.
Nothing.
I was
Austin,
homeschooled growing up.
Nothing.
No, I
Bill?
didn't play that.
No.
God,
I feel like Dom.
man. So
He's
for
a
any of the
I played
listeners
Doom
out
and
there,
Wolfenstein.
I remember.
okay, it'd be like,
PlayStation
you
2.
get experience and you're like a level 38 cleric or paladin. That's how you would. If this was a Dungeons and Dragons game, everybody would have their own level.
You're the last guy that I would have thought that had a Dungeons and
Somebody
Dragons
can comment.
knowledge.
Listeners, comment. Back me up. Ask a question
Water
about
wizard.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Roast them. Just roast them.
Bill brought up Doom. All right, one more thing then before we get out of here. This will show all of our ages. What's your first video game system? Ready, go.
NES.
The original. Okay. Mine's Atari 2600, baby.
Atari 2600
Yeah.
or Oregon Trail on the computer at school.
So that game was good.
In Odell Lake.
Duke Nukem.
Duke Nukem.
Oh, well, that's a little further down the line. Trevor, what's...
I've never owned a gaming system.
Oh,
I know.
This guy. He was out in the woods, baby.
Exactly. I really
He
was.
He's developing his woodsmanship.
Actually, I was out on the Allegheny River probably as a kid.
Oh, man.
Austin.
PlayStation 2, James Bond Nightfire.
That's a good one.
He's a young man.
Goldeneye.
Man.
Goldeneye.
With his big
yeah,
H.
That was fun.
GoldenEye is great.
You send me a picture of your jersey there, huh? We'll make it the cover shot.
Woodsmanship.
You really like it.
It looks like you took masking tape and just like...
Then if you're going to ask that question, who was your favorite wrestler?
We've been
Oh, right.
down this
Ricky,
road
right, we have.
before.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Damn it.
That's
Yours,
so quick.
yours is the Rock.
I know.
Oh, Grove, you asked this before.
Mine's The Rock too.
Yeah.
Know your role.
We can
Shut
go
your
back through
mouth.
it.
Shut your hole.
I forget the Undertaker.
Do you smell?
Austin, you don't even know.
I remember watching The Undertaker.
All right. There it is. How woodsmanship, being an outdoorsman, a riversmith, that's Trevor's vote, or what some might just call being fishy, really does help you catch more trout. There's really no mystery to this intangible quality. It simply makes sense that knowing your environment and being comfortable within it sort of frees you up to focus more intently on the tactics required to catch trout. And acquiring this woodsmanship can either happen naturally by growing up around the woods and the water, or you can develop it intentionally with real commitment to the process. All right, thanks to everyone out there for listening. Thank you for your comments and support in so many ways. Next week, we're tackling a tough topic that we've been thinking about for a while. We'll have a conversation around the troubles with club fishing. We'll ask some hard questions and do our best to bring some issues into the light of day. So tune in for that one and buckle up. Montana Matt, will you read us out?
I got it.
Matt Grove.
Here comes the readout.
Read out.
Remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,000 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and tags too. Be sure to
Dial up.
Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, now featuring the Troutbitten Tip Series, the Fish and Film Series, and the Troutbitten Fly Box, all in collaboration with Wilds Media. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a comment, because that really helps. Until next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water. Bill Dell talking about deer drives.
Wasn't a gig.
Still light up, baby.
Pellet hogs. Anyway.
You know, they were fed good.
Yeah.
Pellethogs.com.
You should be in your underwear.
Like a weatherman.
What are you doing?
I don't tie many parachutes.
Oh,
I don't believe in parachutes either.
Parachutes are like my favorite.
They're hard to tie.
what?
I hackle the crap out of them.
What?
Find the dumb ones.
You really like it.
Austin, you don't even know.